where they strung up a man, who they say he murdered 3. Strange things have happened there. No stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris James, and my cat's attacking my microphone again. I need coffee. I'll bet you need coffee too. Let's all take our needs over to 4501 McPherson, the Organic Man Coffee Trike, and stop being so darn needy. If it's too far to drive, you can go to organicmancoffeetrike.shop and get the best coffee in the universe. If you haven't checked out Trailer Trash Terrors with Vic Hermanson, what are you waiting for? Annabelle Lee to come visit you in the middle of the night? Ooh, that could be upsetting. I get some grief from the folks that consider themselves to be the experts on Bigfoot anytime I use the word paranormal along with the name. The word paranormal consists of 2 parts, para and normal. The definition implies that the scientific explanation of the world around us is normal, and anything that is above, beyond, or contrary to this is para. The undiscovered giant ape proponents get all frazzled when I start talking about Bigfoot being something other than a flesh and blood creature, living in the woods, hugging trees, eating fruit and vegetables, playing with the birds, that kind of thing, the hippie Bigfoot. They can't explain how these creatures survive or where they go when massive hunts are on. The game cameras have so far captured 0 images of a hair covered creature. I suggested that maybe the IR sensors on the game cameras might be visible to Bigfoot. No, 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 no. Why not? Because they don't believe it. That's why. I've been told that no ape is able to see IR or ultraviolet. To which I say, well, Bigfoot might not be an ape. I get things thrown at me. I've been told by the experts they know what Bigfoot is. I asked, have they sat down with a Bigfoot and asked, and I get more things thrown at me. We used to drive up to Jefferson to attend the Texas Bigfoot Conference run by Craig Woolheater. He was open to most of my crazy ideas. He's now doing a UFO conference as well. It's a really nice town, just one long drive to get there. Being a troublemaker, I always wore my UFO magazine hat from Bill Burns. When I ran into Nick Redfern, he liked the hat, seeing as he worked for the magazine. Things got weird when somebody in the Bigfoot group decided they wanted to get away from the whole cryptid thought process. A Bigfoot was actually just an unknown ape. They started changing the name of the group. Then they moved the conference to Tyler, trying to get away from those people, the ones who thought Bigfoot was anything other than a giant ape. At the first Wood Ape conference, what a name, the first speaker got up and said, you might see a Sasquatch in the woods, in a parking lot at the edge of town, maybe crossing the road somewhere, but you will never see one in a UFO. He had some cute graphics. My wife was not impressed with him or his lecture. She later said something about what about all the people who have actually seen a Bigfoot in a UFO or near one or around one? Well, we had a long discussion all the way back to Laredo. My wife does not get mad easily. If she did, well, I wouldn't be around anymore. On the drive home, she kind of unloaded about his lecture. Well, I had my own issues with how all of my ideas were looked on with such derision. Nobody patted me on the head saying, there, seeing as I am sometimes considered to be a bit intimidating. We agreed that this would be our last Wood Ape event. The Wood Ape boys kept changing the name, trying to accomplish credibility with the boys in the white lab coats. I did say the only time the white coat squad will be willing to talk with the giant ape folks in the US is when the Bigfoot is found wandering around the mall, and then the real scientific community will say, thank you very much. We'll take it from here. Y'all go back out and play in the woods. The white coat boys are not going to want anything to do with the Bigfoot community, no matter what they call themselves. Bigfoot researchers should just go for it and look for their own crowd to impress and stop worrying about those guys in white. As the name kept getting weirder, eventually Craig was able to get the original name, Texas Bigfoot Research Center, back from the Wood Ape Boys. He immediately put the conference back in Jefferson, where it belonged. I haven't been up there in a few years. I can't get my wife to call in sick on Friday so that she can drive up there with me. 526 miles is a long drive. Some will say, oh, it's not that far. Well, I do have a few bad discs in my lower back, and sitting in one spot for 9 hours can make me kind of unhappy. The 2024 Texas UFO Con will be August 16th and 17th. Jefferson is a neat old town with a lot of things to see. The Miniature Railroad Museum will amaze you. The Museum of Measurement and Time is a wow as well. I'll be there trying to stir things up a bit. Hope to see you there. That's August 16th and 17th in Jefferson, Texas. Too many people who say they're looking for Bigfoot will disappear as soon as things get a bit out of the ordinary. If you're looking for something, it doesn't matter what, you really should follow every lead, no matter if you think it's nuts or not. Throwing your hands up and yelling, I don't believe it, is not how you find things. James Aiken was a sheriff's deputy in Georgia. He took a call from a couple who were having trouble with some unknown thing. It was sneaking around their farm at night. It was scraping and knocking on the sides of their house and looking in the windows. Aiken drove out to have a look. At first, he was trying to discover there was a normal, uh, just a person involved, or maybe a bear, or something normal. Some teenagers out drinking beer and causing trouble. He found a bunch of huge footprints, and that kind of got his attention. Nobody had feet that big. Aiken followed the prints as they took him into a swampy area. He followed the tracks, and they vanished. Tracks are easy to follow if you know what you're doing. You don't look at the horizon and expect to see where the tracks are taking you. You look at the ground, and you don't just walk along like you're on a hike. Whoever or whatever had made the tracks took one step after another. You have a pattern that you look for. Depending on how big it is how long each stride is going to be. The average stride is about 30 inches. Aiken looked at the last footprint. He looked for the next one. Nope. The creature he was following had vanished, as if it had stepped through a portal, or maybe it gotten picked up by a ship. He contacted an internationally known Bigfoot group. They got all excited when he told them about the huge footprints. They wanted all the details that he could give them. He told how he had followed the prints into the swamp and they vanished. Oh, right. We'll get back to you. Click. The group didn't want anything to do with a disappearing Bigfoot. I hear this way too many times. Someone has an encounter only to be shunned by the researchers who say it's a giant ape. No portals, no UFOs, no, no, no. In April 2018, my wife and I went to the Southeast Texas Bigfoot Conference in Huntsville. This was their first conference, and a lot of the folks you'd see in Jefferson were there as well. I was standing in one of the many lines waiting to see or to talk to or to check out someone's books when I struck up a conversation with the guy behind me. It's what I do. I will start talking to anybody to find out if they have any good stories for my books. The guy who'd worked for the government, like me, and he did have some cool stories. He said he had noticed a correlation between UFO sightings, Bigfoot encounters, and people disappearing from the national forest. He said there would be several reports of lights in the sky doing weird things. Anyone that was in the forest had a bigger than usual chance of seeing a huge hair covered creature. The next day or so, there would be reports in the papers of one or two people going missing from the area where the UFOs had been seen. A part of his duties involved fire suppression. At a forest fire, his crew was bivouacked in an equipment site. It was just a piece of land surrounded by a fence, so the equipment would still be there when needed. He was into Bigfoot, and as well as a lot of other paranormal things. He knew that his crew was either skeptical or didn't believe in things like that whatsoever. As they sat there in the dark, catching a break from the fire, they heard something stomping around outside the fence. It walked the length of the fence, and then they all heard the sound of something pushing down on the top of the fence and then stepping over into their little compound. It was the middle of the night. It was dark as a politician's heart, and the equipment was blocking their view of what this thing might be. The guy whispered to one of his men, "There's a Bigfoot in here with us." The creature walked along the fence, now on their side. The footfalls sounded like they were coming from some huge monster that was walking on two legs. Not knowing what to do, they did nothing. Just sat there and waited to see if it would go away or if they were going to have to make a run for it. The creature moved to the far back corner, and then the sound of the fence being pushed down came to them again. The thing moved off into the night. Once the sun was up, no one was willing to say that they'd had a Bigfoot with them. The fire crew all tried to laugh it off as being a bear or something looking for an easy handout. I carry a notebook with me everywhere. I was writing as fast as I could, and he would pause once in a while so I could get caught up. But he really got excited telling me his story. A lot of people, when they find out you're willing to listen, will unload on you as if they'd known you for years and not just 5 minutes. I gave him my business card and told him about the show. It was then my turn to talk to or look at or whoever it was that we'd been in line to see. It wasn't until later that night I discovered that I hadn't written his name down. This is odd because I've interviewed a few hundred people and I'm always careful to get their name down so I knew who to thank while telling their story. I think he was Don or maybe Dan, but I can't remember and I don't know how to get a hold of the guy. In the 1960s, the CIA investigated a simultaneous encounter with a Bigfoot and a UFO in the Presque Island State Park in Erie, Pennsylvania. The ensuing reports were documented as a part of Project Blue Book. Presque Island is a peninsula arching out over Lake Erie to form Presque Island Bay. It is one of the state's most visited summer tourist destinations. In July 31st, 1966, four tourists from New York stopped their car in the sand and they spent the day enjoying the sights. When it was time to leave, they discovered their car was stuck. People, if you're going to drive into wilderness areas, uh, you want to have a 4x4 vehicle, a Jeep, something that once you get in, you can get back out. If you don't have a four-wheel drive vehicle, you should have the equipment on hand and know how to use it to unstuck yourself. It's uh it's a skill that more people should know, but fewer seem to handle. Cars do not make good off-road vehicles. They make really good business for wrecker trucks. This was long before cell phones, so nobody in the group could contact anyone. One of the members, Gerald LaBelle, said that he was going to walk as far as he could and try and find a payphone. There was one at the ranger station just up the road, a ways. At around 10 p.m., a police patrol unit stopped to ask if they were all right. After being informed that someone was out getting a wrecker, the officers said that they would check back in an hour or so. When the police did return about 35 minutes later, the people with the stuck car said that they had witnessed something weird going on up in the sky. They described a UFO, an angular craft that was emitting a red and orange light, was flying along the beach. It descended to the beach where it radiated a beam of white light that looked like it was trying to track something in the woods. Eventually, the craft took off at an incredible speed heading to the north. One member of the group, named Douglas Tibbets, led the officers to the area where they had had their sighting. He was wondering what this mystery craft had been looking for and if there might be any evidence of what it had found. The two women, Betty Clem and Anita Heffley, remained in the car while they waited for everybody to come back. Tibbets and the officers had walked about 300 yards up the beach when they heard the car's horn being honked. Thinking something was wrong, the three men went back to the stuck car. Clem and Heffley said they'd witnessed a dull, black shape, bigger than any man, with a huge head and shoulders. It had arms that hung down past its knees. They didn't see the face, but perhaps it either had its back to them or it was simply too dark to see. It was standing right in front of the car. They said it sounded as if the thing was scratching the roof. When Clem blew the horn, the creature just walked away into the brush. The two women gave detailed descriptions of the creature that they had seen. It was huge, dark, weird shaped, so the authorities decided that it must have been a raccoon. That's a big raccoon. In the early hours of the following morning, officers patrolling the area where the craft had landed discovered some marks in the sand. These were triangular, like the feet of some kind of a landing craft. The officer writing the report said, "I have no reasonable explanation of the UFO." He also described the witnesses as being credible, if confused. The investigation of the case was eventually abandoned, remaining unsolved to this day. The Project Blue Book report dismisses the group's testimony as possibly either a hoax, though they have no reason to say so. Local TV station aired a segment some decades later interviewing a man who said that the UFO had been a hot air balloon that he had ordered and built from an issue of Boy's Life magazine. The man's claims implied that the homemade hot air balloon could have traveled in an absolute straight line, precisely due north for several miles, carried by the wind without straying off course. Despite the fact that the witnesses' accounts described something far more complex than a balloon, the man's testimony doesn't explain the strange marks on the beach where the craft had landed, or what that huge hair covered creature had been. Could the Presky Island incident be a result of a window area where beings from another dimension enter our universe, like a portal connecting our universe to another? To this day, the witnesses maintain their account of what had happened, and many others have come forward saying that they too saw a UFO above the peninsula that evening. Now I wonder, why would the CIA be looking into a Bigfoot type creature along with a UFO sighting? To begin with, in the 60s, the CIA was only supposed to work outside the US borders. They were to look into intelligence in foreign countries and report back to the president. We don't know what Bigfoot is. We can make all kinds of wild guesses, but until we actually interview one, we can only guess. Some like to announce that Bigfoot is a descendant of Gigantopithecus, a huge prehistoric giant ape found in Asia. The mysterious and elusive ape man community refer to Bigfoot as most well-known cryptozoological creature in our culture today. Although many have seen the man beast and some say they have evidence proving it exists, mainstream science is not convinced that Bigfoot is real. They say they need a body before they'll believe it. I'll just bet in the basement of the Smithsonian is a few dozen Bigfoot bodies hidden away from us. Just 'cause the government says they do not really believe in something doesn't mean that they don't really believe in something. Those who assert the reality of Bigfoot do not necessarily agree on what Bigfoot is exactly. Some believe Bigfoot is simply an elusive primate, similar to a gorilla. Others believe the creature is closer to a prehistoric man. Some say Bigfoot is an extraterrestrial. Countless researchers and authors have written about Bigfoot, although the furtive primate theory is the dominant explanation for the creature. There are a few number of books and articles addressing the possibility that Bigfoot's true identity is more alien. Author and radio personality Micah Hanks points out that researchers such as John Keel and Stan Gorton have noted parallels between sightings of ape like creatures and UFOs. In an article titled Curious Cryptohumanoids, a link between aliens and Bigfoot, Hanks refers a study conducted by George Mason University professor Peter Leeson in 2008. Leeson plotted reports of UFO sightings on a chart along with reported Bigfoot sightings. Hanks explains that Leeson noted an intriguing pattern where states with more UFO sightings also appear to have more Bigfoot sightings. Hanks goes on to say that in the biggest blog for New York Times, his guest blog for the New York Times, Leeson wrote that 6 of the top 10 UFO and Bigfoot states are the same. Theoretical nuclear physicist and cryptozoologist expert Dr. Franklin Rule. If you ever watched Sightings, he was the old guy that always talked about getting slapped in the belly with a wet trout. Well, Dr. Franklin Rule wrote an article for the Huffington Post in which he presents the notion that Bigfoot could be an extraterrestrial creature. He too looks into UFO cases to support his theory. He details an encounter that occurred October 25, 1973, where a group of farmers in Fayette County, Pennsylvania, observed a brightly lit dome shaped UFO approximately 100 feet in diameter. He said, as the locals drove towards it, they saw a pair of gargantuan creatures covered with thick, matted hair, luminescent green eyes, and long arms that descended below their knees. A farmer's son fired a gun at one of the creatures, which raised its right hand in the air. At that very moment, the UFO disappeared, and then the two Bigfoot creatures escaped into the woods and were never seen again. Rule recounts another case in which a dairy farmer, William Bosick of Frederick, Wisconsin, had a hair raising experience December 9, 1974. The case was featured in a January 75 issue of APRO Bulletin. APRO stands for Aerial Phenomena Research Organization. This was a civilian UFO research group that operated from 1952 to 1988. According to the report, Bosick was driving home at approximately 10:30 p.m. when he spotted an object on the side of the road. It was approximately 1 mile from his farm. He had been driving slowly because of patches of fog, and his headlights reflected off the object, so he slowed as he approached it. It had a curved front of glass, and inside he could see a creature with arms raised above its head, Bosick told reporters. When later interviewed by field investigator Everett Leitner, Bosick said that the newspaper account, which appeared in the St. Paul Pioneer Press, was basically accurate, except that the ears on the human he saw inside were placed much higher on the head. The object was standing still and appeared to be 8 to 10 feet in height. The transparent glass area through which Bosick could view the occupant was bullet shaped at the top. It tapered to a peak. He had slowed nearly to a stop when he came up upon the object. Fear took hold, and he decided he'd better get out of there, so he stepped on the gas and took it on down the road. The human, as Bosick referred to it, had hair sticking out from its sides of its head. It had ears protruding out about 3 inches, and they were shaped like a calf's ears. It appeared to be clothed in some kind of a tannish brown colored form fitting outfit like a diver's suit. Both arms were extended above its head, and the hair stuck out from the outside of the arms. There was no beard, but there was hair or fur on the upper parts of the body. Dr. Rule cites an example from 1888 where a cattleman described an encounter with Indians in Humboldt County, California. Rule said they led him to a cave where he saw a hefty humanoid creature covered in long, shiny black hair, had no neck, and it was sitting cross legged. One Indian told him that three of these crazy bears had been cast out of a small moon that dropped from the sky and landed. The moon then ascended back into the air. Rule said that he believed that these crazy bears were actually Bigfoot, and that the moon was what they were describing was a spacecraft. Jack Kiwani Lepsiradis also discusses American Indian encounters with Bigfoot in his book Psychic Sasquatch. With a background in anthropology and psychology and conservation, Lepsiradis has researched Bigfoot for 50 years. In his book, he describes a trip he took with a friend to visit an Indian family on their farm in Wisconsin. According to Lipseratus, the head of the house informed him that since moving to the farm that summer, the family had observed round, glowing objects in the sky. These saucer shaped craft occasionally landed on their property. These landings reportedly took place mostly in the evening while the family was watching TV. Suddenly their dog would start to go berserk, barking and whining and trying to hide under the couch. Then, sometimes, an ominous looking creature, a giant man shape, would come and peek in the windows at them. On the first few encounters, the teenage boys grabbed their 22 caliber rifles and ran outside to chase off this intruder. Each time they were mystified as to where the stranger had gotten to. Once the two boys saw a 7 to 8 foot tall man run into the barn. Then they heard him climb the steps up to the second floor, the hayloft. The youths cautiously tiptoed up the stairs. They then heard a thud from somebody jumping to the ground from the second level. One of the boys ran to the side of the barn just in time to see a Sasquatch duck around the other side. When they reported this incident to their father, he immediately banned all guns, and he counseled them as to the nature of this being. He told his sons to accept the Sasquatch as a spiritual friend, that the creature meant them no harm, and that they were to conduct the creature was here to conduct some kind of a task for the benevolent star people who were on the flying saucers. The sons accepted this as the entire family of five had seen the spaceship land, and within an hour of landing, the Sasquatch would boldly stand at their window and look in at them. The head of the house had been informed years before by a medicine man of the association between Bigfoot and UFOs. There are stories of UFOs and Bigfoot at the Sherman Ranch, also known as the Skinwalker Ranch. The folks doing research there, as well as people living nearby, have lots of bizarre stories about these two things together. In the book Hunt for the Skinwalker, Colm Kelleher and George Knapp reference a retired teacher named Junior Hicks, who they described as a regional, unofficial UFO historian. According to Hicks, local residents have frequently reported sightings of creatures that resemble the legendary Sasquatch, better known as Bigfoot. Based on beliefs of the local Ute Indians, The Bigfoot sightings on and near the ranch complicate the task of identifying the mysterious creature. Hicks claims that some of the ape like creatures are Sasquatch, while others might be skinwalkers, beings of pure evil that can assume the shape of any animal. Kelleher and Knapp also cite Canadian writer and Bigfoot researcher Ron Murdoch, who asserts that the existence of Bigfoot is taken for granted by most Indians. He claims that the Athabascan Indians of Alaska regard Sasquatch as the big brother who looks out for Native American people and brings signs or messages during troubled times. Murdoch also asserts that Hopi elders believe that Bigfoot delivers messages from the Creator. Unexplained animal mutilations are another mysterious occurrence reported at and around Skinwalker Ranch. According to Kelleher and Knapp, Bigfoot like animals have been reported in the vicinity of the animal mutilation cases, but not just at Skinwalker Ranch. They described that during the 1974 wave of cattle mutilations cases in Nebraska, Kansas, and Iowa, witnesses reported seeing UFOs and animals that resembled apes or bears on the ranches where the mutilations occurred. Similarly, in 1975, during a wave of animal mutilations and UFO sightings, three separate witnesses saw hairy, man like beasts in their yards in Idaho. What is Bigfoot? The easy, comfortable answer is it's nothing but an elusive primate. The giant ape crowd say there is no debate. That's their idea of science. Don't tell me anything that goes outside the preconceived assertion it's an animal. We are going to examine all the evidence that fits neatly into our preconceived idea on what Bigfoot is. One interesting idea was that Bigfoot type creatures are deposited here by extraterrestrial UFO uh, pilots to test our environment in the same manner that we might one day in the future deposit primates on a planet whose atmosphere we want to evaluate in terms of potential landing. Dr. Franklin Rule postulated that perhaps the Bigfoot creatures are UFO pilots landing on Earth for unexplained purposes. Maybe higher level ETs are leaving behind some specimens as guinea pigs to test our environment for long term survival. Or possibly these Bigfoot are criminal entities being deposited on Earth as a form of cosmic deportation. Kiwani Lapsaritis suggests all evidence points directly to the fact that the creature called Bigfoot or Sasquatch are, in reality, giant hairy humans with extraterrestrial origins. The apparent paranormal aspects present in many Bigfoot sighting reports and Indian legends and beliefs suggest that whatever Bigfoot is, it is no ordinary primate. Author and cryptozoologist Nick Redfern explains in his book Wild Man, The Monsters and Mysteries Saga of British Bigfoot. There are a number of researchers who recognize that as much as it would be undeniably preferable to place Bigfoot in the merely flesh and blood category and nothing else whatsoever, there is a significant and hard to deny body of data and testimony that points in a very different direction. It is that direction outer space. These reports and legends link Bigfoot and UFOs lead some researchers to remain open to that possibility. Nick Redfern has left the country. His dad got sick back in England, so Nick went back to be with his family. There is a possibility that he may decide to just stay there once everything is taken care of. I hope things work out for him. He's a super nice guy. If you never got to meet the man, well, that might have been your only chance. In Sanoste, New Mexico, Franklin Virgil and his son Dory have been investigating Bigfoot and UFO sightings on the Jicarilla Apache Reservation for the last 8 years. They have come to the conclusion that the two are closely related. Sightings of huge, dark forms in the sky that move at incredible speeds seem to occur in the same place and around the same time as sightings of tall, hair covered ape like beings. Both men come from the Jicarilla Apache Reservation, and they speak about the close relationship between Bigfoot and UFOs. They've noticed a triangular pattern with the sightings concentrating in the north, southeast, and southwest portions of the reservation. Dory Vigil has a theory. He believes that the Yeti, although they definitely stand out here on Earth, are way less conspicuous than any of the other alien types that tend to be spotted in and around the reservation, which Franklin describes as being more reptile like. The aliens dropped the Bigfoot down to do their dirty work, he said. They pick them up later and then they drain their brains. John Keel is known for having written the Mothman prophecies and for popularizing the term Men in Black or the MIBs. He described what he called the window area, where he constantly observed a range of unusual phenomena that occurred in special locations in particular sequence. These included star-like lights seen in the sky moving at speeds and angles impossible for conventional aircraft, full moon-sized fireballs streaking low across the horizon, smaller lights seen near ground level, followed by the appearance of the classic saucer-shaped spacecraft. At some point in this bizarre phantasmagoria, within the same area, large mystery primates would also show up, what Keel called big hairy monsters or BHMs. Sometimes they were then followed by the MIBs. Keel thought that all this phenomena were staged, transmogrifications, he called them, in the manifestation of a single energy source, the origin of which is unknown. The only things witnesses saw that were real were the light forms. The BHM spacecraft and their occupants, as well as the MIBs, were all hallucinations. That's why they appeared non material. This caused either by reactions within the perceivers' minds or actually projected on the observers by an intelligent, perhaps malevolent, outside force that was directing the energy. In April 1994, Brian Canefield was driving his pickup through the mountainous area when the engine suddenly just quit. He was alone on his way home from Buckley to an isolated settlement known as Camp 1 in the Mount Rainier foothills above Lake Kapowsin. He was a high school senior known locally as an average normal kid. All the dash lights went out as well. Without him hitting the brakes, his truck stopped on its own. He sat there on the edge of a wooded area on one side and an open field on the other. In the dark, with no idea what was going on, the starter didn't even make a sound when he tried the key. He sat wondering what was wrong. As he sat there, he spotted a huge set of birds' feet descending from above. This was followed by an enormous bird like body, and then the entire creature. This thing landed in the middle of the road. It stood 9 feet tall. It had blue tinted fur instead of feathers, a bright yellow eyes. It had tufted ears and a huge sharp teeth. It looked like a giant ape, but with wings. Brian held tight to the steering wheel, wondering what was this thing and was it possibly going to be dangerous. The creature was standing there staring at him like it was either checking him out as its next meal or wondering what this young guy was doing sitting on the side of the road. He said he was so scared all the hair on his head and his arms was standing up. Canefield said the creature was staring at him, looking back at it as if it was wondering what he was and what it should do next. It was like the creature was making up its mind on what it was looking at. After a few minutes that felt like hours, the creature unfurled its wings. The wingspan was clear across the road. As the wings began to flap, the air around the creature became like a storm. It rocked the pickup back and forth. Slowly, the creature flew off into the direction of Mount Rainier. Once the creature was gone, Brian sat there wondering what had he just witnessed. With no answers, he finally tried the key once more, and his truck fired right up. He drove back home as fast as he could go. Once home, he told his mother and his brother what he had just seen. They both insisted that he had to take them back to the scene of the encounter. Somehow they got him to show them the spot. There were some huge three-toed tracks in the dirt on the side of the road. 1998, another bat squatch sighting came in from a hiker who saw one get hit by a logging truck. The body was flipped over the side of the road and fell into a canyon. The hiker said that he had taken a tumble and he'd landed not too far from the edge of a cliff. After laying still for a bit, he waited to see if anything hurt, followed by was anything numb. Next, the hiker took inventory of his gear. Some things were missing, scattered along the steep hill that he had just come tumbling down. A semi horn got his attention. He looked over the side of the cliff and he saw a logging truck braking violently just before it hit this huge hair covered creature. The creature was flung into the air as the truck went barreling by. The witness thought he had just seen a Bigfoot get hit by a truck. Thinking about it, he realized that this Bigfoot creature had wings. They had shut out on either side as the creature was flung through the air. The log truck had jackknifed. As he'd tried to avoid the creature, the driver had lost control and it went over the edge of the cliff. This was followed by the sounds of metal being twisted and torn as it hit the bottom. The witness began looking for a way to get down to the driver. It was a steep cliff without any rappelling gear. There was no way to get to the crash site. He decided the best course of action was to hike back to the nearest ranger station to let them know what had happened. He got going down the trail when he heard the sound of huge wings accompanied by the air being buffeted around him. Looking up, the witness saw a second huge winged creature flying overhead. It was carrying the creature that had been hit by the truck. The second creature landed near where the witness had landed after his fall. The fur looked purple. It was about 15 feet tall. The face was ape-like, and the wings were about 35 to 40 feet across. It had long, pointed ears at the top of its head. The nose was small. The large beast appeared to have 4 sets of hands. This creature looked like a cross between a large bat and an excessively large, furry human. This next story can be found in my book, Paranormal Stories. Robert told me a story that was told to him by his dad, and here's what he was told, and I did it pretty much word for word how Robert gave it to me. He said, my dad recounted a story several years back. He started by saying, son, you might not think after I tell you this that I'm crazy, but I swear I saw this at the ranch in Mexico, just a few hours' drive from Laredo in the state of Coahuila. He said he said it was late at night and he saw a bunch of lights in the distance from the ranch house. So he went to investigate, thinking that there were poachers hunting in the family ranch. As he drove nearer, he noticed the lights were of a greenish tone and they were floating. He got within a short distance and he noticed the outline of a triangular craft. The greenish lights were emanating from the center, where he saw a black silhouette of a humanoid being. The craft shot straight up into the night sky without much sound. The same site had another UFO sighting, and the ranch house was haunted. He also said that Jeb Bush Jr. used to stay there once during deer season. Robert said, my best guess is it's around 15 to 20 years ago. Rancho Villa Juarez is about 2 hour drive east of Laredo, Texas. In the early 2000s, there were a number of reported sightings of flying humanoids in Mexico. They were seen as far north as Texas and California. Some folks even managed to get video footage showing some kind of a being flying through the air. One of the most famous was seen in Monterrey, Mexico, and it was recorded by a UFO group having a meeting at a hotel. Robert's brother in law and several family members saw one on at least two occasions on the family ranch. They got a close up view and described it as a hairy ape creature wearing what appeared to be a backpack. It came out of a cattle pond surrounded by dense brush. Once seen, it flew straight up into the sky at a fast speed until it disappeared from view. In October 1992 in Beaverton, Oregon, a witness spotted a hair covered creature walking along the road using its arms like an ape would. At first, the witness thought it was a gorilla. The creature turned and looked at the witness, showing an unusually ugly face. It stood on 2 feet, came up to about 4 or 4.5 feet tall. The creature turned and fled into the brush, running on 2 feet. As it went, the witness saw what looked like a backpack on the creature. Could this hairy creature seen in Oregon be connected to the one seen in the ranch in Coahuila, Mexico? Is the backpack some kind of a device used to fly, or is it just something they use to carry their things? Robert also mentioned how people hiking in the woods have seen orange orbs flying around amongst the trees. Within minutes, they also encounter a Bigfoot. What is the correlation? No one knows. It's another unexplained thing involving paranormal and Sasquatch. The best answer to is Bigfoot paranormal, as far as I'm concerned, is yes. Bigfoot isn't a thing. It's several things, like birds. There are thousands of different types of birds, and some that can't even fly, some that swim like fish, but they're all still birds. Out there in the woods is a bunch of huge hair covered beings that look kind of human, yet are something else. They're not apes, they're more like men. They live out there, and once in a while, somebody like Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin get a chance to film one. The reason we don't find the bodies is they don't live in the woods all the time. It has been suggested that they might live in caves or underground in those huge spaces that scientists are just now beginning to discover. Some Indian tribes believe Bigfoot is a creature that crosses from some other world, like another dimension. They come to our world to do unknown, mysterious things that the elders tell their youngins. If you're fishing and you catch 4 fish, then you see a Sasquatch, you give him 2 fish. If you only have 1 fish, you go home hungry. If you're picking berries and you have 2 buckets and you see a Sasquatch, you give him 1 bucket. Another tribe tells their young that they won't mess with you as long as you stay out of their territory. They consider Bigfoot to be a tribe of humans that lives in the woods and are not into human contact. Josh Turner's book, The Bigfoot Phenomenon, has a bunch of stories of Bigfoot encounters with things going on that make apers run and hide. These encounters are always accompanied by other things, paranormal things. Too many Bigfoot researchers pay no attention to what the Indians have to say about something that they grew up with. The thing that really adds the paranormal to the mix is there might also be something out there that is looking to prey on us humans. It has no shape, no solid form. It uses our fear as food source. Knowing a lot of folks are out in the woods and several are looking for a Bigfoot encounter, these beings wait until you're in the thick of the woods before they attack. Taking on the shape of a Bigfoot, they come charging at the hiker and they turn their Bigfoot encounter into a life and death flight. I hear it all too often. A person gets chased by a Bigfoot, yet they manage to escape. I don't know about you, but I know I cannot outrun a Bigfoot. These beings don't want to catch us. Being non corporal, they would find us a bit too chewy, too hard to digest. By scaring the witness and getting them to run, they suck in the energy being given off as their fuel. Fear is a powerful emotion. The pursuit is just a way to enhance that fear. And just possibly, there might be some other shape shifting thing that also is looking for an easy meal. These creatures will kill and consume a human. Look at how many people go missing each year, many in state and national parks. The only thing I can say for certain is we don't know. Bigfoot could be any one of these things, or it could be a combination of all of them. If you go with the understanding not all the witnesses are lying or crazy, you're left with a lot of confusing stories. No matter how hard we try, we may never know for sure. Hope you enjoyed tonight's show. If you did and you think you might want to help support the show, go to Amazon.com and buy one of my books. I could always use the money to buy more coffee. Or you can go to the Coffee Trike on McPherson and buy one of my books there if you're in Laredo. Excuse me, if you're in Laredo. Till next Saturday, this is Chris James for Strange Things. And that's the wrong mouse.
Are you coming to the tree where they're strung up a man who they say he murdered 3? Strange things have happened there. No stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.